Howdy and welcome to class. I'm Mr. Gray, and this is going to be a study in Okinawa, the final battle of World War II. So this is the solo game of the month for June from Gabe Barrett as the publisher. I'm going to have to pull it up for the designer. I'm going to put it on the screen in text because I'm so sorry. It's too late for me to check. It's going to be on the text. Anyway, solo game of the month, and it is going to be on Gamefound actually today. So when this launches, which is going to be June 15th in the morning. So you can check that out. It is a rondel style game, an action selection where you are making laps while also fighting enemies. So what the story is of course that final battle of World War II in Okinawa, and the Americans versus the Japanese, or what's being experienced. You play only as the American soldiers in this case, re-experiencing the moment. So they went to great detail, I can see, in trying to be historically accurate in the art renderings and the locations, items, all of that kind of thing in the game. You're interested in how it plays, but also with Gamefound, if you want to look at it, click the link in the description below, click the pinned comment. These solo games, excuse me, I'm still getting over a cough. What a mess. These solo games of the month usually ship for $5 within the continental United States, $6 elsewhere. The list of places where it can be shipped will be on the Gamefound page when it goes live, and I believe it is, I'm going to say $25. It is, if it's $1 more or $1 less, forgive me, that's about what these run. They come in a VHS case so that you're able to travel with it. This was provided by the publisher, and this is a sponsored video, of course, featuring this Kickstarter. So, let me show you how it plays. You can decide whether this is for you or not. Alright, taking a look at what we have here. So, first of all, we have our action selection rondel in this loop-de-loop right here. So, we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and our little guy that moves around so that we can select our actions. In the middle, we have the enemy row. So you have your enemy soldiers over here, and then you have your special soldiers in the remaining space. So this is space 1, space 2, 3, 4, 5, just like up here. Now, you have the resupply right here, which is not a space that you land on, but there is an action when you pass it every time you do this lap that you get to take. And that is from the resupply row that we have at the top. So the resupply row contains resupplies that you're able to place on the action spaces. So if I gain this in a resupply, I gain a token and a card that I'm able to replace one of these, or if I don't want it, I can just discard it. Over here, we have our deck of known enemies versus unknown enemies over here. You're going to see what that means. Then over here, we have my health. It's going to be 4 or 5 in the final game. You should know that this is a prototype. It's a like 90%, 95% complete prototype. Some things are going to be adjusted before the final version. Then you have your round tracker, your lap tracker, and you have your objective right here. You're going to have 4 objectives that you work through in a game. Top one flipped over. You can see it goes by accurate location and all of that, as well as an event, then usually an ongoing event that happens during that entire objective until you complete it or until you die. So, how do you play the game? Oh yeah, you got dice. You got your dice, and then you got your enemy dice. There we go. Plenty of them, too. Plenty of them. How do you win the game? You win the game by getting to all the objectives. Objective 1, 2, 3. You complete them all. If you complete objective 4 and you're still alive, then you win the game. If you die before then you lose the game. How do you die? You die by running out of health. Another way to lose, I guess not die. Well, yes, in that case it would be. But another way to lose is to not complete the final objective within the time limit of 3 laps. All right, so we know how to win. Let's sort these out so we can actually start playing. Objectives. All right. When you're setting up, you pick your objectives. Objective 4 is always going to be the same. Objectives 1, 2, and 3, there are 2 variants of each, so you shuffle them up and randomly pick one, which is what I've done in this case. So you go 4, 3, 2, 1. We're familiar with this kind of setup. Flip over the top one, right side up, Gravy Davis. And this card actually tells you exactly how you need to set up the board. First of all, you will always set up this beginning rondel here the same way with the same cards. You can shuffle and randomly place them for a more advanced game if you would like, but it's always going to be the same cards. In the final version, will these have some kind of marking to show that they are the beginning cards? Possibly. It's something I've mentioned. Maybe, maybe not. But there you go. And then you lay those out, and then you put your little round so that you know what it is. Above, below, I prefer to put it on to save space for the camera here. So that's always going to be set up the same no matter what. Resupply is always going to go there, and you're going to have 3 resupplies available right there. This tells me, though, that I have 2 laps before this objective is done. That means when I go around, when I complete my second lap, this objective is completely done, and we're going to move on to the next one. I try to complete as much as possible during those 2 laps so that the rest of the game isn't harder. It also tells me that I get 4 action dice that I get to roll for this particular objective. So I take 4 dice of mine, I get to roll them in my little dice thingy right here. So I forgot to feature that. So you got the dice tower, nice dice tower that comes with it. Okay, we got our 4 dice. Now, we have our J right here. What that means is we have our, I'm going to call them events. Forgive me if I got that wrong. But we have the letters I. So I took J. You see it's J. So I'd flip through here, flip over the one that's on the top. It has an effect that is going to be in play for the entirety of this objective. Lose 1 health each time you complete a loop. So when I finish this loop, I have to flip one of these over. I've lost 1 health. Ugh, that's no good. Also, I forgot to mention, you do start out with, I believe, a health token and a plus minus. And I usually request that there be a card, like a turn card or something like that, that also makes sure you set up properly. I'm sure there's going to be one for this. Prototypes rarely have those, but it is mentioned, so we'll see if one of those gets added as well. All right. We got that out. Now, I've got 6 of the soldier tokens. The enemy soldiers right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They come with 6 dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At the beginning of the objective rounds, I'm going to roll all of them. Boom, boom, boom. So really, it's just the beginning of the turn. I roll all 6. Wherever they landed, I put that number on that particular action card. So 9 on a 9, a 1. If you have more than one of the same number, it's no problem. You just double them up. Boom, boom. 0 is a 10. Also, oh my goodness, if you have not already, please turn on your Klingon subtitles in case I make a mistake. It's almost inevitable, so I can write the correction in here. Awesome. So we've got that set up. They've got their hits. I'll explain exactly what those do. Then we see this CFC. Those are the known soldiers that you're going to flip over. What does that mean? That means I've got known soldiers here with all the letters, right? A through H, I believe, with 2 of each. So I took out the C, F, and the C. I'm going to put that H back at the bottom. Boom, boom, pow. There we go. CFC. So you're going to lay them out in this order. Space 1, space 2, space 3, space 4. When we lay these out, we also set them up. So if we see that it has a fog of war icon, we place 1 on there. So this has 1 fog of war, this has none, and this has 1 fog of war. So we're going to place that right there. We have our enemies all set up. You're going to see in other objectives, so we're going to peek ahead. They have a little more going on. I actually want a different one. Let's look at both. So in this case, we would put G, B, and A at the top, no problem. But you see there's a series of letters underneath, B, C, and D. What does that mean? Well, you take those cards, so I would take B, and then I would take C and D. So there's D. Where are you at, C? Where did I put you? Oh, they're both out already. Okay, well, we'll pretend we had it. And here's what I would do. I would tuck B under this card. So I would tuck B face down like that. And then I would tuck the C under this one. And then I would tuck D under this one. All right, we're going to pretend that's C. Just pretend it's C. Boom, boom, boom. And we'll see what that means later. So that's if we were setting up for objective 2. What if we were setting up for objective 3? Then you can see there's numbers, not letters. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means it's the unknown enemies. So you're going to place one unknown enemy. So space 1 would be F, space 2 would be card C, and I would place one unknown enemy under there. And then the space 4 here would be an A on top and 2 unknown enemies underneath it, and then nothing under space 5. You got a C on top with nothing tucked underneath. Pretty cool. I think that covers our setup. If you have questions about it, put it in the comments. I like these to be as comprehensive as is possible. All right, we've got everything laid out. I messed a few things up, but for demo purposes, this is totally fine. So what do you do on your turn? You get to do one of two things. You can move, or you can activate an action card. To do this, you need to use your dice. You don't get to modify these unless you have a nice little token that you can discard one time from your resupply to add a number or minus a number. First, let's say that I want to move. I would discard one of my action dice in order to move the number of spaces shown on the dice and exactly on that number. So I discard the 1, which means I move forward 1 space. If it was a 3, I would have to move 1, 2, 3 spaces. As you go around, you would go, let's say I was on the 4 and I discarded a 4, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. You always have to go the exact number of spaces. We'll pretend that it was at the 1. And we'll talk about what happens when you pass over the resupply. Remember, this is not an action space. You just pass over it. All right, so I moved 1 space. I have 3 action dice left. I can move again, but remember, I only have 2 laps before this objective is done. And I want to eliminate as many of these as is possible. So what's involved in that? Well, you've got these soldier tokens here. These are 2 health each. How do you know that? Well, if I attack it successfully, I flip it over and it's red. If I attack it when it's red, I remove it. Good. If I attack one of these, how do I read it? This one has 3 health, so I would need to hit it 3 times in order to remove it. But I cannot attack while there's a fog of war. So first, I would need to remove the fog of war by using a scout action. See how it has the icon, remove a fog of war? Then I could remove that, then I could hit them. This here is what they are going to attack. That's their attack value during the enemy turn. So if they successfully attack me, they're going to take away 2 health. Not great. But there's more to it because we have the pillbox. Take a look at the pillbox. This has 5 armored health. What does that mean? Well, when it's a soldier, if I'm going to attack, let's say I'm on the infantryman and I use an action to attack, then I can attack for 1 health against a soldier type. That would be these soldiers or something with this symbol. I would take away 1 damage if I did that. Or I would attack for 1 armor. This has 5 armor. I can only attack it with an armor value. So this would take away 1 with that 1 attack. But it has a special value here. It says, basic soldiers cannot be attacked while pillbox is on the battlefield. I cannot attack any of these until I get rid of this pillbox. I got a lot to do, right? So how do I do it? Well, I'm going to take my actions. So I discarded dice to take the action. Let's say that I want to attack the pillbox. Well, what am I going to use? I can use the 1, the 3, or the 4. It doesn't matter, except if I want to take the action more than once. First thing you do before you take your action is you declare your enemy. You're only allowed to attack 1 on this particular activation, okay? So even if I use more than 1 dice, it's only against the 1 enemy. So if I use the 1, then I would get to attack for 1 armor, boom, and then I would lose that 1 dice. I can only activate with that card. I can activate with as many dice as I want, but I can only activate it the 1 time. So once I'm done, once I pick the dice and I'm done, I can't use that card again until the next turn, which is also going to be, the next time around. So I would have to move before I get to the next one. Correct me if I got that wrong, Gabe. That's how I understood it from the instructions there. But let's say I didn't do that. Let's say I didn't use the 1. Let's say I used the 3 and the 4. Well, why would I use the 3 and the 4? Why not the 1 and the 3? If you want to use more than 1 dice, which means you get to activate that ability more than one time for each dice. They have to be consecutive. So it would have to be 1, 2. That would be fine. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. I could activate 4 times. That's not the case. I don't have a 2. It's just a 1. What I could do is I could choose to discard this special token, this resupply, so it's out of the game. Remove it from the game to give this +1. Now we have a 2. Well, I like this. So I could go 2, 3, 4. Well, that's fine. It does not loop around. You can't go 2, 3, 4, 1, right? It's just 2, 3, 4, and then you're done. I'm going to use all 3 of these dice for this one attack, which means I get to do this 3 times. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. If there's some special effect, it would activate every single time for this. So that's going to be 3 hits. So let's put a 2 and a 1. All right, so that's out of 5. Once this gets to 5, let's pretend that it was 5. Let's say I've actually defeated it. Then I would remove this. Boom, boom, boom. And if it is a known enemy, I put it back in the known deck. So I'll put it with the Fs. You don't have to do that, but I like to stay organized. If it was an unknown enemy, then you're going to put it in a discard pile, and if you need to later, you can shuffle that all up and reuse it again. If there's a face-up card underneath, you are going to leave it there. If there is no card at all, you are going to leave it there just like that. I have used all of my action dice, so now we're on to the enemy phase. Believe it or not, I've shown you most of the game. We're just going to go through a couple little details. That was the end of my part. Now it's time for the enemy phase. For the enemy phase, we start on the left. First of all, we activate all of the dice. What does that mean? That means if my player pawn is on any of the spaces with the dice, if I was here, 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 or here, I would take 1 damage for every dice there. So if I was here, I would take 1 damage. I'm not. That's great. If I was here, I would take 2 damage. I'm not. So that's fantastic. Once that's done, then those dice, they don't really need to be there anymore. We finish. So now we go left to right to activate these. Now the machine gunner goes. What are they going to do? They are going to attack the adjoining spaces to the red arrows. So see how this says they will be attacking space 2 and space 9, because that's where the red arrows are. If my pawn's not on there, nothing happens. My pawn is there. So I get hit. I'm going to take 2 hits. That is not awesome. And then we go here, and then we activate anything over here. This one attacks these 2 spaces. Nothing happens. My pawn isn't there. I survived it. That's great. So that's the end of that portion. Now, before we start our next turn, we need to update a few things. So we can update our round tracker. Well, actually, I haven't lapped, so it's just another turn. Never mind. We'll get to the lap. What I do, if there are any face-down cards visible, then I flip it over just like this. There we go. Now, if possible, the cards will also slide left all the way down to space 2. Space 1 is always reserved for the soldiers. We don't mess with that. So let's say we flip that over. There's nothing to slide to the left because there's no empty spaces. Then we're done. We're ready. But let's say that this wasn't there. Let's say that it was empty. Then instead, we would slide this to the left just like that. And if I understand right, this wasn't in the rule book. Any tucked cards remain underneath. If it is in the rule book, forgive me. So if I'm wrong on that, if I leave that there and slide this to the left, just let me know. But from what I understand, this would slide to the left. Anyway, little thing, we can correct that if I got it wrong. Let's say it's my next turn. We're going to cover resupply as well as changing the objectives, and then, of course, the final objective. So let's say that I rolled my dice. Yay, yay, yay. We got all our dice. And we're going to make them whatever we want them to be, just for the sake of example. But here we've got 1, 2, 3, 3. Maybe we can make it work. I want to pass the resupply. So I'm going to move 3. Discarded. 1, 2, 3. Of course, before we did that, it was the beginning of our turn. We would have re-rolled our 6 dice and placed them wherever it was applicable. So the 7 and the 9 and the 10. You do that every time you start your new turn. 4 and 4. I was going to skip it, but it drives me nuts. Let's do it correctly. Oh my wow. All right. I don't actually, well, I could activate. So let's activate. I'm going to discard the 1 and the 2. 1 and 2, which means I get to activate this twice. 1 and 2, which means I get 2 sandbags into my inventory. That's great. You do have limited inventory, so if there is not a token, you can't get any more. In this case, there are 2. That's the max you can have, so I've got them. I can discard one of these at any point to prevent damage. So if I'm going to get hit, I discard this, and the hit is canceled. All right. Now I'm going to use the 3 to move. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Oh boy, I landed on a hit space too. This is not good. But notice I passed resupply. So before I take any more actions here, I'm going to resupply, which means I get to pick one of these visible cards on the resupply deck, which should actually be this way. There we go. I'm going to take a card that with a token we don't have. So I'll pick up this card. I get this resupply token, and I can discard it to use it at any time. It's binoculars. It lets me remove 1 fog of war at any time. I'm going to discard it right now. I don't have to do it right now, but I'm going to remove it from the game to remove 1 fog of war from right here. There we go. So we got no fog of war there. And while we're at it, I'm going to discard my health pack as well in order to recover 1 health. Just flip it right back over like that. I can deal with that. Now this, I get to replace any action card out here on the loop, or I can just discard this, whichever I want. Let's say that I want to replace one of the infantrymen, any of them. I'm going to replace like this, boom, and boom. And that card is now out of the game. So, you still have the same amount of action spaces. Something interesting, then you're going to fill that space with the next. Oh good, this is what I wanted to pop up. So you've got this sideways one here. Whatever ends up getting revealed, take one of your resupply tokens, flip it face up, and put it right there. Let's say, instead of the sniper here, just for example's sake, let's say that I picked the machine gun team. Notice how this is horizontal. It is horizontal. I get to pick up the star, which is great because I get to show you what that means. Horizontal, notice it actually takes up 2 spaces. I would have to pick any 2 cards, discard them, and drop one of those turn tokens. So that means that there's now only, or excuse me, not turn tokens, action space numbers. So I had 10 action spaces. Now I actually only have 9. That's pretty rough. Okay. Or if you want to be really smart, you can be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and end with 9. Do what works for you. There we go. Remove that 3. This is for the rest of the game. It doesn't change. I only have 9 action spaces now if I do that, but it's a more powerful card. Now, what do all these resupply things mean? So this is a veteran token, so I can discard this at any time to upgrade a card to the veteran side. Not all of them have this. Some of them do. So you flip it over, and now it's an even more powerful activation each time. Before, it did 3 damage to a soldier or 1 armored damage. Now it does 3 damage to a soldier, 1 armored damage, and gives me 1 sandbag as well. So not bad if I land on that action space. Alright, we covered our resupply. Any other tokens that we didn't get to look at? I don't think so. The grenade, you can discard at any time to do 2 damage. I don't recall if there are more special rules on that, but I haven't used it in one of my games yet. I should have, and I didn't. I think we've covered it all. Alright, so we're going to act this out. Let's say it's now the enemy's turn. They're going to attack with their dice, and this time I'm only going to go far enough to show how to use a sandbag. They're going to attack me for 1. I'm going to discard a sandbag, and now I don't get damaged, and that's great. We would play out the rest. They would do their attacks. If I survived, we would go to my next turn. Let's say that I go to my next turn, and I've made it around 1 full time. So I go back to space 1. I made it here, 9, 10. Maybe I landed on 1. Maybe I landed on 2. I finished a lap. So I would go down to this. Once this gets to the lap number here, then that's the end of this objective. So let's say that happened. Let's say I went around again. I ended there. It was lap 2. Now we have completed this objective. There are 2 ways to complete objectives, either by completing the laps or by eliminating all the enemies. If you completed all the laps, what you do at the end, you go ahead and remove this. you take all of the remaining soldiers and you place them face down over here in the, I forget what it's called. They're in the reserves, I believe. It's like a retreat and reserve, but I forget the word for it. Anyway, you put it to the side, so I'm going to put it right there. Take off any tokens that were on there. You also take all of the soldier tokens and put them right beside that. Oh boy, you know why? Because they're going to come back later. That's why. Then we're going to flip over our objective card right here. So remove all these dice so it looks nice and fresh. Make sure we have our tokens up there. All right. And we complete our setup for our next objective. So we go to, also, when you complete an objective, I should say, when you complete the objective, I already showed you that, but you still complete the enemy turn so that you have to survive that as well. Flip this over, we see we get 2 laps, so we reset this. We would get 5 action dice this time, so we increased by 1. We would use the K card instead, so we put this back, I, J, and we get K. So this ability is now ongoing for the entire round. Then we get to add, well, not really get to, but have to add 3 soldier tokens. And then we're going to pick card GBA to lay out on top here. We've got GBA, A, B, and G. Just for thoroughness sake, already showed you how to do this, but twice doesn't hurt anybody. So G and space 2, and then space 3 is B, and then A, and then we're going to tuck cards B, C, and D underneath, which I have somewhere. I've got D. They're somewhere in here. Where did I put them? We're going to pretend that these are B, C, and D. Oh, I tucked them out of order. That will never happen to you. So that's B, and that's C, and that's D. We get the point. Yes, we do. We get the point. And now I believe we're ready. We start our turn, we roll the dice, we roll 3 dice for the 3 soldiers, we use our action dice, we keep going around. Let's say I finished this round and I actually managed to defeat every single one of these enemies. So I haven't made 2 laps, let's say I've just made 1.5 laps, but I just defeated the last soldier there. All of these are out. That ends the round. The enemies don't attack because there's no enemies left. So what do? Instead, you get to resupply, take your 1 resupply action, take the card and the resupply token, replace an action space if you like, place the token in your reserve or use it immediately, and then, just like normal, you would get rid of this, and you would flip over the next objective, set up, keep going. That brings us to only Objective 4. Objective 4 is a little special because there's one additional thing that happens. First of all, you set it up. Objective 4 is the same every time. This is the battle on Hill 89. This is a very brutal part, very difficult. Set it up as you normally would, and all of your soldiers that were placed that you did not get rid of, that survived and went back into the retreat and reserve area, get placed out here. Well, how? Well, you shuffle them up, and you place them underneath the cards that are already there. So let's say we had these cards already out. Then I would just go from left to right. I would tuck 1, 2, 3, 4, and then if there were more, I would just go back and tuck them underneath. I would also add any of the soldier tokens that were left over to the tokens that are already there. In order to win the game now, I have to eliminate all soldiers before the end of the 3rd lap. If I make my 3rd lap and there is any soldier left, then I lose the game. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for staying with me. So what do you think about this action selection rondel type game? Is it for you? I honestly didn't have many. I sent a few questions to Gabe like 20 minutes ago. Because I'm in a time crunch, okay? I just got the game yesterday, and I want to have it ready for launch. When you're watching this is my tomorrow, because the future is weird, and life gets confusing. So I didn't get to wait for the response. He's usually very fast. So the only questions I had were just about some icons that could make it a little easier for readability. Very minor things. From what I know of him, that always gets updated before the final product goes out. I don't know what else to say. I love you all. I'll see you next time.